and welcome back to the 313 Men, Money, and Marriage podcast. And as we did say in the intro, we're going to be talking about marriage chemistry. And if you know the podcast, we have our returning guest. He's been on multiple times, and he is a fan favorite. So everyone give it up for Mr. Robert Prasch. Robert, how are you doing?
Hey, man, I'm blessed, brother, and I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
All right. Robert, we're bringing you back on this particular show. We're talking about marriage chemistry and why it's so important to have it if you are going to be married. And I guess the first thing I would want to do is maybe just get a little bit of background. You've been married for roughly how long?
5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Coming up on 5 years.
Coming up on 5 years. All right. And you have children, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So that's what we're going to be getting into, and that's what we're going to be talking about. You know, marriage chemistry is just simply a connection that you have with a person. So it really works well. You almost kind of know what the other person is feeling or going through. So if they're acting a little bit unusual or different, you'll pick up on some of those signs, and it's really easy to connect and talk about it before the problem gets to a little bit too out of control, as they would say. You know, the problem might explode or get too big. But when you have marriage chemistry, you basically can figure things out pretty quickly. A lot of it is a lot of nonverbal cues that you might get from your spouse, and you have to recognize those nonverbals, and then you go from there. So that's what we're talking about when we say marriage chemistry, is that picking up on some of those subtle signs and knowing what to do when those signs appear. Now, for Robert, the first question I'm just going to throw out to you is, how did you and your wife meet? And I ask all this of married people, so don't feel like you're on the spot here. But when did you know she was the one? So the first part of the question is, how did you two meet? Then after you met and you were dating, how did you know she was the one?
Well, I guess there's some part of me that is a little bit shy about admitting this, but I'm all about being open and honest. I'm all about being an open book, and I think it's important to tell people, because I know there are people out there that can find their soulmate the same exact way, but are maybe reluctant to do it. And yeah, man, I met my wife online on a dating app. Yes. And, when you're going that course, you have to watch. This was one that was around for a long time. And, me and my wife both have very, very good BS detectors. So you do have to be careful. But we met up after a few interactions. We took it slow. It was messaging and then phone number. And then we started meeting up here and there. And I remember us talking early on, and I was telling her I didn't want a relationship and all these things. And she almost told me right then, oh, yes, you do, and you're going to get one. And I just wasn't listening yet, but as we progressed, I started really seeing her in all of her majesticness, if that is a word, just her beauty, her grace, her nurturing way. My wife is a nurse, and it's part of her God-given gift to take care of people. And very early on, she started asking me questions like, what can I do for you? How can I make your day better? And I never had that before, man. I never had a woman that was my peace, that was someone that I wanted to go to when times were tough. The first person I wanted to tell exciting news, because my experience prior to that was always drama and chaos and things of that nature. So that was maybe not an exact moment, but me beginning to see that beautiful, amazing, nurturing spirit and the way that she loved me better than I could love myself. It was, I knew it. It just wasn't exactly at a moment. It was me beginning to see that a few months in.
So you got past, you did what most men do in the beginning. We just want to kick it a little bit, you know, but as you got to know her, you started to see, hey, this woman is about sacrifice. This woman is about expanding upon what I'm trying to do here. And maybe I shouldn't try and kick it. And this seems legit and real. Pertaining to it being online, I don't think it really matters much. I think, you know, you meet people where you meet people. You know, there are success stories everywhere. You're the third or fourth person that I've known who met their spouse online, and they've been married for multiple years. So there isn't anything saying that there's anything wrong with it. You know, just you meet people where you meet people. And now because of technology, we can do online dating. So, you know, it works for some people, and it doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for some. So I think that's a good, you know, way to look at it. You know, it's if it works, it worked. So that was great. So you knew she was the one. Another question here. I usually try to stay away from some of the religious or spiritual questions sometimes, just because, you know, some people might get a little bit uncomfortable or taken back by it. But in this particular situation, when we talk about marriage, I do like to just throw at least one in there. And the one question I did want to throw at you is your relationship with God. Now you're married. I've been married for several years. Is it the foundation of your relationship, or are you, you know, are you religious people and you know, maybe go to church and different things, or how do you handle the relationship with God?
Well, when we first met and started dating, we weren't overly spiritual or religious. I think we both had a loose belief of God, but more and more as we progress and grow, our relationship with God is the foundation of our relationship with everyone, you know, in the family, the kids, each other. I think the thing that was so attractive from me to her and her to me was that we both had this vision of the future and what we knew it could be. And it was very similar. So the compromises that we had to make weren't many. It was just sort of adapting and flowing with each other's vision of the future. Because one thing we knew is we wanted better than what we had. And we both were working very hard to do that. And not only from a financial standpoint, but from a spiritual one. We wanted to be better people. We seen that in each other, and we talked about different things that we were doing to accomplish this goal. Not only that, you know, we spoke about the things that we wanted to accomplish financially, spiritually, emotionally, where we wanted to be as human beings, all told. And that was the thing that moved us closer and closer to God, that constant striving to become better, you know, father, mother, parents, brother, sister, better human being in all aspects. That striving, that seeking that we found in each other, and something that was very much instrumental in carrying our relationship forward and through turbulent times, we found God. And it's so beautiful because we found him together. We were there in the beginning, but as we grew and progressed as people, evolved into better human beings, we found God together. And now he universal energy, whatever you want to call it. I'm not specific when I get down to it, but let me tell you something. Me and my family pray together every single day. It is a foundation of this household. It's something I do with my children. We talk about what we're grateful for. We talk about, you know, the power of God in our lives, and we are perfectly okay sharing it with other people because I believe, you know, that's part of the program here, like we're doing right now.
Great. Now, you know, a lot of people, you know, when I say sometimes people might be taken aback by that question, is because sometimes people, it's more of a, you know, an impromptu thing if you're not overly spiritual or overly religious to an extent. But I always think that most married couples follow that trajectory that you might have described, where it's best to do it together and go together versus having one person maybe too far in front or too far behind and then trying to, you know, play a catch-up game when it comes to your spirituality. So it was good that you did it as a couple and you did it together. And I think that led to some success for you, you know, with your putting God first, basically, in your marriage. This other area here is, you know, a lot of times nowadays, I don't know if you pick it up on some of the social media, but people use the term. I did an episode about, do you believe in soulmates? in the past. And people had the term that people use nowadays is the love of my life, which is essentially the same thing, as calling someone a soulmate. But the question I did want to get into with you, do you believe in soulmates, number one? And if you do you consider your wife your soulmate? Now, keep in mind, she might be listening, so.
Now, anymore, no one could truly answer that question if they felt the opposite. Luckily,
Yes.
I'm not that person, so I can truly say that, yes, my wife is my soulmate. I do believe in soulmates, and here's why. There were certain things within me, and we're going to talk about that in the Men and Addiction episode that we have coming up. I'm really looking forward to it. But there were things within me that were broken, man. There were things within me that really needed healing. And because of my unwillingness to look at it or address it, because I was tough, I was macho, I was strong, I never could heal from it or move past it. My wife's soul, her heart, her loving, nurturing ways that I spoke of, her infinite patience, peeled back the layers slowly but surely of that onion and helped me heal from so many things that I didn't even realize I needed healing from until we met and progressed in our relationship. Now, on the flip side of that coin, I always say a wonderful couple goes together like this. They fill in each other's gaps. Where I'm strong, you're weak. Where you're strong, I'm weak. And together, we can form like Voltron and really create a real power couple. Something strong, real in this world of temporary things. And on the flip side of that coin, there were things within her that she needed help with, that she needed healing from. I don't think she minds me mentioning that her confidence was not where it is today. When we met, she didn't always feel so good about herself. And part of that was things she dealt with before me. And we also talked about this on our relationship episode, is like, build her up. Build your woman up and watch how she can just make your whole life and marriage, the trajectory of it, go through the roof. And you do that for each other, and you encourage each other and continue, supporting the best self. And you will heal from all those traumas, and you will exceed prior expectations, things that you never could have accomplished on your own. You will do it together. And it's just a beautiful thing about marriage. I truly love it. I love being married. I couldn't see my life any other way. And it saddens me when I hear about the youth not wanting marriage, not wanting children, because when it gets down to it and things go awry and all the stuff out there in the world don't mean nothing no more, your family means everything, man. Your children, your wife, the people that love you, that know you, that have your back through thick and thin, unconditional love. And through that medium of family, you can just accomplish so many amazing, beautiful, wonderful things that you never could even imagine before.
That's a good point. And there's a lot of people who are kind of like, when you get married and you're a little bit older. So for my case, I didn't get married till I was in my late 30s. When you meet people, everyone has stuff, at that point, because they've been through different relationships, they've been through different things. It could be trauma, it could be anything. But it's the healing and working together through your stuff is what makes the relationship stronger, which leads me to like another point of this contention. I guess, well, I won't say contentions, but something that people get a little bit misconstrued in marriage. And do you believe that you should make your spouse happy or add value to her life if you had to pick one or the other?
Well, I mean, if I had to choose one or the other, it would be add value, because it's something that we talked about early on. It was part of that healing process that you just heard me speak of. Is like, I can't make you happy. Your happiness does not lie in anything external. That's part of the problem with the world today, and why we see so many people suffering vice-like behavior, is that they're seeking something outside themselves. They're seeking their happiness in external events, whether it be substance or behaviors or actions or shopping, or I mean, there's so many things now that we seek and attach our happiness to, and it makes people, you see it, anxious, fearful, depressed all the time. And it's once we have that, excuse me, realization that everything that we'll ever need is already within us, and we generate our own happiness from within, we can really begin to shine that light out into the world. And when you do that in your household, excuse me, what you will do is you will enhance the happiness of your spouse or your family. And I always spoke about this with my wife, is I am here to fulfill, to add value, to enhance the happiness, but I can never make you happy. I really can't even make my children happy. What you can do is you can set the conditions for that to happen. But happiness really has to generate from within. As far as value, I think that as a family unit, it's important that we seek out ways to be valuable, to be of service. Because if you don't, excuse me, you can really start to get trapped in your own head, in your own wants, in your own needs. And when you put service first, it eliminates a lot of the things that are not important, and it just builds that harmonious environment for your children, for your wife. Like we have my mom here because she helps out a lot with the kids. So me continually putting that vibe out, like how can I be of service? How can I make everyone's lives a little easier within the whole? Sure, sometimes it is frustrating, and a lot of times it's very difficult. But I also believe that's our lot as men. Like the women sacrifice much. I'm not minimizing any of that. But as men, there are also certain things that we have to sacrifice. So a lot of times that's my wants, my needs, my emotional, how I feel about something, because I have to make the decision from what is the best possible decision for the entire household. And we continually, as men, as fathers, as leaders in our community, have to have that mentality is, okay, this is how I feel. Let me process it on a logical platform. But then at the end of the day, I may have to sacrifice my wants, needs, or emotions for whatever is actually best for the entire unit, whatever is going to help everyone thrive, whatever is that best possible scenario.
Got it. And that's a good point, because when I was on your show, I mentioned that, I can't provide that happiness for you all the time. I can give you bits and pieces of it or doses of it, but it's not something that should be a requirement of me in order to be with you. I think people have to come with their own self-worth, because it's not putting that burden on someone else is quite a bit. And I think some people who are unhealthy, and are seeking love often do that. And when they don't get what they want, then that's when the conflict, will start to occur in a marriage, because it's not kind of what they quote unquote signed up for. But I always looked at it differently from that. I always thought that, people need to have those things taken care of prior to jumping into a marriage or jumping into another person who you're going to be with. You have to, I always say, if your stuff isn't completely cleaned out, at least be at the point where you're working on it, where you're kind of just getting it to the point where, yeah, I do have some issues, but this is what I'm doing to resolve those issues. So that's one way I always looked at it. Other quick thing I just want to ask you here is, I was listening just recently today, and I was listening to a married couple who had been together for, I want to say, over 10 years. And they had ran up a bunch of debt. I'm talking about over $100,000. And what they did was, in order to get out from under the debt, this was all credit card debt too, consumer type debt. In order to get out from under it, they ended up selling their house and then moving into a house where they were renting. So they went from owning home, got out of the debt, used the profits of the house to get out of the debt, and started to rent. And then within a couple of years was back up to about $50,000 in credit card debt. And so the D word started to be floated around, obviously, from that. And the reason why I bring that up is because usually in a lot of situations, finances and money are usually one of the top 2 or 3 causes of a divorce in a marriage. So my question is to you is, has finances ever been an issue in your marriage at all, or how did you handle it if it did occur? Anything along those lines?
We eliminated the possibility for finances being a problem very early on, before we were even married. As soon as we moved in together and we were sharing bills, we opened a joint bank account. You know, I hear a lot of people nowadays having separate bank accounts with their spouse. I don't believe in that. I actually would not want to be with somebody that's doing that. I would always feel like they were planning some escape, or they needed some secretive ways about their money. And I need full trust. I need full disclosure. And so the only difference that there may be is, we're men and women. So what we want to spend money on and what women want to spend money on, it's just difference of nature. So there's always some, I wouldn't say butting heads, but some differences of opinion. And it's just like anything else within a successful marriage. You give and you take. You give and you take. Sometimes you get your way and sometimes you don't. But it's always put through that filter of, okay, what's the best possible choice for everyone? And then, me and my wife have a general rule, and this may be low to someone, and depending on what financial scale you're on, but like, if either one of us are making a purchase more than like $50 or $100, then we discuss it. We discuss it because we value each other's opinion. If I want to buy a new laptop for my podcast, my wife may have a deal through her work. She may know of a brand that's specifically better for what I want. She may be able to tell me a better time, like, hey, look, let's not do it this week. I put in an overtime shift next week. And then, all these things have to be discussed. With anything over, like you said, you make that rule, and it has to be a general thing. We do have credit cards within our own names, just because that's the way the credit works. And we talked about that. I could teach you how to fix your credit too, man. We worked hard on that and did it together. Got both of our credit scores back over 700. So that's a very exciting part of our relationship too, although it may seem a little boring. But we are, I would say, because we just bought a new car, so that was about $40,000, and so that's on your debt. But I mean, it's not like negligent or anything. But with the truck, maybe $50,000 in debt at total. But it's very manageable in my life. It's not anything that we really have to stress over. Or I think once money gets tight, then it does create problems. But I think that problem needs to be addressed on a deeper level. Who's contributing what? How are we going to win here? How are we going to get what we need to thrive? And then is it all being allocated to the proper place? Where are we wasting? Where can we not spend more? I mean, me and my wife constantly do this. There were times in the beginning of our relationship where, we were eating out all the time, DoorDash, buying clothes all the time, doing this. And now we still do all those things, but we do it in a very strategic and planned way. That way we can have what we want, have our cake and eat it too, so to speak, as far as having what we need for investments, having what we need to pay off in debts, and also having what we need to spend now and survive, and also do some nice things. So it's a lot. It's definitely can get chaotic, but you work together, you love each other, you stay open and honest, you be patient, loving, and kind. You work together, you can surmount anything in a marriage.
I totally agree with you. Most people, car payment debt or anything like that, it's not, yes, it is technically debt, but it's, as long as the payments on anything are not too outlandish and it's not suffocating you any, I mean, those are things that you have to go into debt for sometimes, just so that you can go out and earn money and, make money and different things. You got to get there. So that those types that you're describing is just, they're not that difficult. It's the consumer debt is what really jams people up a lot. So it sounds like you and your wife put together a nice plan, and it works for you. And if both of your credit scores have went up, that's great. And that's really what's supposed to happen. It's just, but these are conversations I think people need to have before they get married. And I think it makes it a whole lot easier than to try and solve the problem in the marriage sometimes if a person is coming in there and they don't have those thought processes to it. One last thing I just want to ask you, Rob, before we wrap up. With the children, what's your family dynamic like with that? There's, some parents are, more disciplinary. Some parents are more, have more of a laissez-faire attitude towards raising children. Some families have just one person do all of the disciplining and stuff like that. Or, how does that whole situation pan out in your home?
Well, it's a great question. And I think once again, and I'm speaking about my own relationship within my own house, and so I could say we've done it masterfully. We work together so well with this, but it wasn't like that the whole time. Because as you have kids, we talked about this on Creating Greatness when we did the Raising Healthy Children episode. You're sort of learning along the way. So what happens is, and that's why I think it's ultimately important to have both parents within the household if both are healthy and willing to do what needs to be done, because, and I'm speaking in a traditional sense, the father is always prone, or maybe not always, I was prone as a father to be a little harsher, a little stricter, a little higher expectations early on. They're 1, 2, and 3, and I'm putting out pretty high expectations at those ages on what I expected them to do, because it was my philosophy that if you hold those expectations, you see where they land, and then you can adjust. But if the expectation is here, if it was here, they're never going to get here. But if it was here, they might get there, and then it's above average. But along the way with that philosophy, you can be very demanding, very harsh, very strict. I can be hard to love on. For a young kid, I can be hard to love on sometimes. My wife tells me, like, hugging and kissing on. I'm working on all that. I've learned all that, and I'm getting better at it day by day. I have 3 sons, and one of them just turned 3, my youngest, so I'm getting all that, and it's a wonderful part of it, but it's things that I had to learn. So it is the man's job, in my opinion, to set that high standard, to be the disciplinarian, to be like, hey, I'm going to go get daddy, and they know that they better tighten up. But it's the woman's job to soften, to adjust, to ease the transition between the message from father to child. Like if I yell harshly at my son about something, then he may go to mom, but mom goes, well, this is why your father yelled at you, and, did it A, B, and C. So it's that working together. And then if there's communication is huge here, because you take on that general role as like, okay, I'm the bad cop, you're the good cop, in essence. Hey, you can't do that. That's unacceptable. That, timeout, or spank on the bottom, whatever you decide. And then when your wife picks it up and you're not supposed to do that. Your dad loves you. He's expecting this. So then there's that working back and forth, that dynamic. But then there's also has to be big communication. Because at certain times within your child's life, they're going to display different behaviors at different times. And then, like, at the same ages, your other kids may not, or may do different things. So I always have these conversations when I really see something in one of my sons that's bothering me, something that I've gotten on him about once or twice or maybe 3 times, and it's becoming an issue. Then I speak with my wife, and I say, babe, so-and-so, whichever child is doing this. It could be Rocky. Rocky's my youngest, and he's a wild child. Rocky is doing this. He's being aggressive. He's hitting, whatever. We really need to nip this in the bud now. And I need your backup because, let's say, for me, I'm getting angry, and I don't want to spank him out of anger. If he gets a spank, I want it to be, hey, this was the crime. This was the punishment. And dealt in a logical, controlled way. So I may speak to my wife and say, hey, I'm starting to lose my temper with Rocky because he's displaying this behavior. Can you please intercede? And then she'll pick up the tab. And then also it's great that I could do that with my mom as well. Like, hey, Rocky's displaying this behavior. It's really starting to bother me. I know it's a knucklehead behavior because I did it. And look where I landed before I turned my life around. I really need your help with this. I'm beginning to lose my temper, and I don't want to deal with him that way. Mom's great for that as well. So it's nice having that village sort of dynamic. It really helps your children thrive if you can have some good family members, ones you can trust, by them to help out.
Absolutely. Well, Robert, for an impromptu show, once again, you've nailed it. So I want to thank you, my brother, for coming on and helping me with this and putting this together. And if you want to listen to Robert's podcast, it is called Creating Greatness. I have been on there several times, and it is a really good, a powerful podcast. It's very spiritual. He talks about meditation. He talks about self-improvement. He talks about success, all the good things that you'll need in order to make it to the next level. So check out his podcast called Creating Greatness. Pertaining to our podcast, there's always a link in the show notes with the website to where you can get on the email list and get some information about previous next shows coming up. We also have an Instagram page, the 313, all one word, Men, Money, Marriage, where you can see clips of previous episodes, pictures of previous guests. And we're going to get ready to pop this YouTube channel up here really soon. And that's going to get up and running. And Robert is also going to come back on the Men in Addiction series. If you didn't see the first one, it was called What Causes the High, Men in Addiction, and Robert was on that one. We got a lot of good numbers on that, a lot of good positive feedback on that, and we're going to be doing another episode in that series coming up really soon. So pay attention to that. So until we meet again, we are out.